Good morning again, and thank you for that, Merritt. And we've got the musical genius of Merritt on the piano, just kind of brings that music alive. Thank you, Sharon, for your versatility. Sharon doing the practitioner roles and singing as well. And these times are requiring all of us to be a bit versatile, to adjust, to move with what's happening here. We're living in one of the most unique times in recent modern human history, and we're living it. There is something for me, I don't know, maybe it's a strange mind I have, but there is something for me that's kind of interesting about living in a time like this that will be written about in the history books. And we're living it here. We're navigating this. And of course, spiritually, everything is always evolving us. So we're participating in this leg of the journey of humanity's evolution. And I would say we're doing it well. I would say we are doing it well. The best we can in some cases. There was a minister this week who posted on Facebook, and she said, I think it's fair to say that whoever was answering the question in 2015 of where do you think you'll be, where do you see yourself in 5 years, it's safe to say we all got the answers to that question wrong. But here we are, and we're navigating this, and I'm so glad to be here today and to be in spiritual community where we see the truth of each other and we see the truth of everything that unfolds in life. So it's like God is still God. Divine perfection is still divine perfection. Everything is still unfolding in perfect divine order, even if our human mind goes, how the heck is this divine order? This isn't my version of divine order. This isn't my choice of what divine order looks like. And yet, it is still divine order. And I see so many ways that this is evolving me, that this is evolving all of us, that this is evolving humanity. And I keep staying with that even as I move through all of this, and sometimes where it feels so surreal, and sometimes I'm in the bliss of my spiritual practice and the bliss of my day, and then other times I have a wave of a different energy that comes through me, different emotions that come through, and different frustrations at times of wow, like this thing that I used to do, I'm not doing now. And yet it's all part of the journey. It's all part of our spiritual unfolding and upliftment. Upliftment. I don't think unliftment is a word. Maybe even upliftment may not be a word, but unliftment is definitely not a word. So today, our title is None Are Free Until All Are Free. And this comes from a woman named Emma Lazarus in the 1800s. She was a Jewish activist during the times of persecution in Germany, and then Martin Luther King also used this. So the original phrase from Emma Lazarus was, "Until we are all free, we are none of us free." And then Martin Luther King adapted that to say, no one is free until we all are free. And for me, it's that oneness thing again. It's our teaching. It's that oneness thing. How could we possibly, any of us, be totally free if some of us aren't, right? It's that oneness thing. It's like, you are me. I am you. So how could I be free if you're not free? Because the part of me that is you is not free. That part of me that is you is not free. The beauty of all this is, of course, it would seem to be not very much of a fun journey if I couldn't have any degree of freedom until everyone was free. And the beauty is we can have a great degree of freedom because we have dominion in our life and we have choice about how we look at situations. Like even now, during this pandemic, right? We can either be free or we can be in bondage. We can be free to choose, how am I going to be with this? How am I going to do this ride. We can't choose whether to have the pandemic or not, but we can choose, how am I going to do this ride? Am I going to be in resistance? Am I going to fight it the whole way? Or am I going to surrender and say, what's the good that wants to come forth for me in this experience? Ernest Holmes, in the Science of Mind textbooks, in the beginning of the textbook, I love this dedication where he says, these lessons are dedicated to that truth which frees man from himself and sets him on the pathway of a new experience, which enables him to see through the mist to the eternal and changeless reality. I would love to have changed that to gender-neutral words, but I just thought in this case I would leave it in its original form from Ernest Holmes. I also have a quote here from Emerson that says, man, it's also not gender-neutral, man is conscious of a universal soul within or behind his individual life, wherein, as in a firmament, the natures of justice, truth, love, freedom, arise and shine. Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson. So in this oneness, there's this interdependence. And in our early days of Science of Mind, we were much more focused on our dominion individually and what we could manifest in our lives and what we could create, which is wonderful, right? Because that was a big step in humanity's evolution, right? Where so many were in the space of life just happens and somehow, I'm a victim. Things happen to me and I just have to deal with it. And how beautiful that we stepped further into our evolution and said, no, I have dominion. I can create my life. I can create my experience. For me, even now, even when there might be the appearance that I'm a victim, I choose not to be a victim, right? There can be the appearance sometimes that we're a victim, right? And actually, to some degree, the reality that we're a victim sometimes, right? Someone does something really horrible to us, right? But for me, even in those situations, I don't choose to be a victim. It doesn't serve me. What serves me is to continue to know that I can transcend any situation and I can transform any situation, and any situation ultimately is still going to lead to good for me. It's still going to lead to good for me. There was someone years ago I heard in a talk when I was early in my days of Science of Mind, and one of the ways that they used to put it as an affirmation was, if my toast falls on the floor, it's going to fall butter side up. That's how life is going to turn out for me. And then I said one time in a talk, things just work out for me. And there was a teenager in the kitchen. At the time, that church had the kitchen right alongside of the sanctuary, and there was a teenager in the kitchen, and she talked to me afterwards. She just got such a kick out of that. She thought that was so wonderful. Yeah, I'm going to use that. Things just work out for me, to be in that affirmative sense of life. So with freedom, there's the truest freedom is that inner freedom, right? That freedom that is independent of conditions and circumstances. We are just free. Or as J. Krishnamurti said toward the end of his life in his teaching, that his secret was, I don't mind what happens. In other words, he can roll with life and it's not going to affect his happiness, his joy, his peace. He's going to know the truth no matter what. So that's the ultimate in freedom. Really, no matter how much freedom we have on the external side of life, if we don't have that inner freedom, we're still not free, right? If I am still have all my addictions running me, then how can I be free? If I still have fear and doubt and beliefs about myself that aren't the truth about me, how can I be free? So that's the true freedom, is to be free from our own limiting beliefs. And I think I have a quote from Ernest Holmes about that. He says in his book, How to Change Your Life, your belief is all that lies between you and freedom. Likewise, you need to banish forever any belief that there is a barrier between you and God. So that's the true freedom, that inner freedom. And then there's the external freedom, which of course the inner and the outer reflect each other, right? So we come back to that interdependence, that none of us is an island, and that interdependence where we affect one another. So moving beyond the early days of Science of Mind, where it was like, I've got mine, you get yours, right? It was like, I built my consciousness up, I manifested what I want, you too can do that, go for it. And now I think the more mature version of us that we're stepping into as we embrace the vision for Centers for Spiritual Living globally is a world that works for everyone. And it's an embrace and an acknowledgement that we're not independent islands. That yes, absolutely, it's paradox. Absolutely, it is true that I can manifest what I want in my life. That is absolutely true. And it's true that no one has power over me. That is true. But the paradox in that is that what is equally true is in oneness, we're also all interdependent. It's paradox, right? Because it seems to contradict. It seems to contradict if I say no one has power over me and I have dominion to create my life. It seems to contradict the idea that we're interdependent and that I could affect you and you could affect me. But that's what paradox is. And with spirituality, we have to learn to be okay with paradox, meaning two things that seem to be opposite are both true. They're both true. And if we step into that higher consciousness, we can get that. I don't think the intellect can totally get that, right? But if we rise up into the consciousness that is our oneness with our divinity, something in us can know the truth of that. So in this interdependence, I start to be concerned about your welfare. And I start to use this one power that we all get to use, that we've learned to manifest the things we want in our lives. I start to use this one power to also aid your liberation. In the Buddhist tradition, they have something called a bodhisattva. And a bodhisattva is one who has achieved a great degree of their own liberation, a great degree of their own freedom, such that they are no longer needing anything per se. And then they dedicate their lives to helping others get free. They know that their work is not complete just because they are free or just because they're not needing anything, that the work is still not complete because none of us are free until all of us are free. Because that part of me that is dar, if that part of me is not free yet, then I'm not totally free. Or if the part of dar that is me is not free, then that part of dar that is me is not totally free. This is this oneness piece here, right? Sometimes it's hard to get that because in reality, right, like especially with the physical distancing we're doing now, it's like, hey, I'm over here, you're over there, I'm me, you're you. And again, it's paradox. There is a truth to that. We have our individuality. We are individualized expressions of the divine. And yet, we are also one. Ernest Holmes called it unity in multiplicity. So there's the multiplicity, there's the infinite diversity of life, and then there's the unity. And those two are together. Those two don't conflict with one another. That you can be the absolute unique individual that you are, fully expressed, and that is true. And then it's equally true that in some sense, in some truer sense, you and I are one. That there's only one. There's only one life, as we say. One life. Ernest Holmes said, this law, the law that we use to manifest, is one of liberty and never one of license. True liberty comes only through true harmony. True harmony only through true unity. And true unity can only come through the conscious realization that we are one with God or good. And I would add, and one with each other. Right? In oneness, there's only one. There's all of us individualized expressions, but we're individualized expressions of the one. So in oneness, this is something for, I've said before that sometimes we get so sophisticated that we get far flung, but if we would just get this one concept, this one truth, that all of life is one, so much would be simplified for us, right? Because how could we ever be opposed to any person if we realized oneness? If we realized that person is me. So if I'm fighting against you, I'm fighting against me. It doesn't mean we all have to agree to all the same things, or it doesn't mean that we accept all forms of behavior, but it means I'm never fighting against you, right? I'm never fighting against you. I recognize that you are me, that we are one. It's one of the gifts of this pandemic. It's one of the gifts of this coronavirus, is that it is showing us beyond the shadow of a doubt our interdependence. And do you notice that we're grappling with that? In some ways, we're struggling with that, right? What do you mean I wear a mask? What do you mean this mask is not really going to help me, but I need to wear it anyway? You mean I'm wearing a mask just to help you? What are you talking about? Why do I need to do that? We're learning this interdependence thing. Isn't that a beautiful lesson we're learning? We're taking part in an activity, most of us on the planet, of wearing masks that are for the sole purpose of protecting everyone else and have no benefit for the most part to us whatsoever, except in oneness. In oneness, it absolutely benefits me to wear a mask because you are me, and I'm protecting that part of me that is you. We're grappling with that as humanity. We're grappling with as humanity that you are me and I am you, and that this truth of oneness is actually true. That this truth of oneness is actually true. That it's not just a theory, it's not just a feel-good thing. Oh yes, we're all one. Feels good to all be one. That it's really true. That we're all one, there's no separation. What's good for me is good for you. What's good for you is good for me. In truth. So many examples of how many of us have been lifted up and supported on our path in a significant way by another human being. Probably all of us. Probably all of us, right? All of us had some person or persons somewhere along the way that made a significant difference in our life. It's another example of how we've created the myth of a self-made person, or the myth that we have accomplished all of this as an island, as an individual. We are interdependent. I think back to a conversation I had as a young man in a bar, actually, sitting there in a bar and started talking to the man next to me in the bar, and it just so happened that he had a gift for me. He had accomplished some things that really opened my eyes to the pathway forward of what it was, excuse me as I adjust the mic here, of what it was that I wanted to realize in my life. It was a very short encounter. It only lasted, maybe 30 minutes or something like that. But in that 30 minutes, it was like divinity sitting right there. It was like God showed up in the form of this person. Never saw this person ever again. Never saw him before that. And in that moment, this person showed up. And it was all matter of fact. It was all very matter of fact. We just started getting into a conversation. And he was someone who had come from wealth. And he just opened my eyes to a different way of thinking. I had come from more of a blue-collar upbringing, and I had limited exposure to some of the things that he had had much exposure to. He had traveled the world already. He had accomplished all these things, and he just had a different mindset than I had. And there was something about that opened something up in a big way for me, that my life was changed in 30 minutes by another person. There's a story of Maya Angelou, that as a young girl she suffered a life of torment and darkness that nearly stole her voice forever. Maya Angelou, can you imagine that? That something nearly stole Maya Angelou's voice? Can you imagine the world? Have we not had her voice? At a young age, she was forced to endure intense physical and emotional abuse by a family member. As a result, she became mute for nearly 5 years. She became mute for nearly 5 years. But with the help of a family friend, Angelou found her own voice again. She was introduced to Dickens, Shakespeare, Poe, and other prolific writers who would influence her personal and professional philosophies, propelling her to become a conduit of love because one person raised her up. One person raised her up. All of us have had that. It might have been a parent, it might have been a friend, it might have been a complete stranger, like in my case. There is this interdependence, and we are learning that collectively as humanity right now. We are learning, this is, I think, the greatest gift of the coronavirus. I think the greatest gift of the coronavirus is it is teaching us about our interdependence, our oneness, and our collective interest being one. There was a phrase called "each one teach one" that was about literacy, and I love that phrase, each one teach one. Each one of us, think about, what if someone close to me, in fact, one of my prayer partners said in the past couple days, she said, I have arrived with so much. I have so much in my life right now. I've been so fortunate. I've been so blessed. And now I really want to look at how can I help other people, that may not know how to have what I have. How can I help them get there? Such a blessing we can be to each other. A great example, in a very negative sense, if you will, of our interdependence and how wonky it all can get if we don't recognize that. If we don't recognize that none of us is free until all of us are free. And how wonky that can get is demonstrated by the situation in years past in South Africa. And I happened to visit South Africa and spend a couple weeks there during the election of Nelson Mandela. And in South Africa, things got so wonky because there was this, I'm going to suppress your freedom, and a false belief that it won't have any impact on me. I'm just going to suppress your freedom because it benefits me. It serves me, so I'm going to limit your freedom. It got so wonky. It was a crazy situation there. Like, it was surreal. When I visited there, it was surreal. It was so crazy. not an acknowledgement that you cannot do something to someone else that you don't do to yourself. We have to get that. You cannot do something to someone else that you're not doing to yourself. Let me tell you how wonky it got there, how crazy it got there. It got so crazy that the people who were trying to keep the freedom themselves and not have others have freedom had to barricade, literally, I mean literally barricade themselves in their homes, right? Because how do you hold down the human spirit? How do you say, I'm not going to let you be free, I'm only going to be free, I'm not going to let you be free? They literally had to barricade themselves in their houses. And at first, I didn't really get this, right? But then I watched the people's home that we stayed in, a British couple, wonderful couple, and we would go out somewhere, and we would just make a quick stop back home. Like, let's go home, freshen up a little bit for 15 minutes, and get back out, and because we were just doing all kinds of things. Just to do that, we had to undo all these chains and locks and everything on gates and like a whole ritual. And even though we were only going to be in there for 15 minutes, we had to redo it all and then undo it all again to go back out. And then redo it all again. I mean, that's literally how crazy it got. And I think it's the most poignant example that I've personally experienced of how, when we misunderstand our interconnectedness, our interdependence, and that what I do to one, I do to all. Jesus said, what you've done to the least of these, my brethren, you have done it unto me. This is truth. This is not just theory, or this is not just feel good. This is not just like, hey, be a good person. You know, there's like a t-shirt out there I saw someone wear, be a good person, which I didn't like at all. I thought, like, what does that mean, be a good person, right? I know it's a wonderful sentiment, and it's my judgment. But it's more than just be a good person. It's like, understand truth. Understand it's not just about when we say what you have done to the least of these, my brethren, you have done it unto me. It's not just like, be a good person. You know, okay, well, I'll do my best. It's like, this is truth. Literally, it's true. Like what you have done to someone else, you've done to you. Our freedom really is, as Martin Luther King articulated so well in some of his talks, our freedom really is bound up with each other. We really do have to make sure that we're all free. We really do have to create a world that works for everyone. Suppose we didn't create a world where Maya Angelou could offer her gifts. It would be like a different world, right? Well, think about all the people who aren't offering their gifts. And then think about what the world would be if we opened up the way for all. That's my vision of humanity myself. My personal vision that excites me is this vision where everyone is so free and everyone is so completely expressed in their gifts and talents and what they have to offer. And I get so excited when I think about that world. I think, wow, that's a whole different world. No one's, holding their head down. I mean, everyone is expressed and living. No one needs to commit crime. No one needs to rob anyone. No one needs to do anything like that. Because everyone feels honored and seen and heard and empowered. And everyone is giving their gifts. This is our divine nature. It is no one's nature to be in bondage. It is no one's nature to do harm. Some people think, oh yeah, there are bad people. But it's not really true. It's not really true. Because each person truly is, not just in theory, each person truly is a divine expression of that one whole, perfect, complete life that is God. And what we can do that appears that someone is a bad person, or appears that someone is not the divine, is we can obscure that with all kind of false ideas and false beliefs. And then we can do that individually, and then we can also do that collectively. Sometimes in a family, one person gets to play the role. It's this unconscious agreement that this person is the person who will mess up and will blame everything on them, right? It's like an unconscious agreement. No one would few people would consciously agree to that. And so in therapy, when they do therapy with a whole family around something like that, what they discover is if they can break that agreement, that person no longer needs to mess up. The theory is this person is just a bad apple, a bad seed or whatever, right? That's the theory. But then we discover that no, everyone made an agreement, usually unconscious, that this is a bad person. And so it was convenient for everyone. Anything that went wrong in the family, that's like, blame it on that person. But the truth is, each one of us is uniquely divine. And we are all interconnected, and we are all bound up together, not bound in a limiting sense, but bound up by our very nature. We are interdependent. There's no way around it. It's the nature and essence and truth of things. That's where Ernest Holmes says that this law is a law of liberty, but it is not a law of license, which means you still have to comply with the nature of things. You're not free to ignore our oneness and interdependence. You're free to do a lot, but you're not free to ignore the way things work, any more than we would be free to ignore the laws of gravity, right? Like, no, I don't like gravity, so I'm not going to do that, Gravity just is. Oneness just is. Our interdependence just is. And our evolution is to recognize that. And to start in recognizing that, it shifts the whole perspective of life. If I really realize that what happens to you happens to me, and that your freedom is connected to my freedom, I'm going to see every person differently than if I don't recognize that and I don't understand that. Somewhere in our soul, we won't feel complete. No matter how much we have, we won't feel complete unless we're contributing to others. Unless we're contributing to others' lives. That's why sacred service is such a beautiful thing. That's why we get so much joy from sacred service. I remember when I came into Science of Mind community for the first time, I was giving everything to that. I was just giving myself so fully like I never had. I had been awakened to what it's like to be in selfless service to others, to life, to humanity. It was such a joy like none other. So we need not feel guilty, by the way. That doesn't serve anyone. Like if you have a lot, right? A lot of wealth, material abundance, success, you need not feel guilty. That's yours. You deserve it. Absolutely, you deserve it. And then you're just called to take that further step to also share and give back. This is our nature. Somewhere in our soul, something will feel empty if all we do is accumulate all the things that we want for ourselves, but we're never having the thought to give back because we're ignoring a part of ourselves. None of us are free until all of us are free. But we can be free in the sense that I've achieved this degree of freedom myself, and I'm helping others along that journey as well. That's a great sense of freedom. So the invitation, the spiritual practice I invite you into today is sacred service. And many of you, most of you, are already engaged in that. But the invitation this week is to see if there might be one new way that you could be of service to another human being. I have this agreement with myself that says, if I can do something that will really help someone else, and it really won't require much of me at all, be easy for me to do, then I am obligated to do it. That's my agreement with myself. If I can do something for someone else that will benefit their life, and it doesn't really even take much for me to do it, it's something where it's in my zone of ease, then I'm obligated to do it. Maybe that's universal, I don't know. There is that scripture that says, to whom much is given, much is required. There might be some universality to that. But nonetheless, the invitation this week is to see if you can find at least one new way that you can give back. Doesn't have to be big even. Could just be that you pull out $1. Usually your modus operandi is when the homeless people are asking for stuff, you just go, oh, no. So it could just be, okay, this day I'm going to just pull $1 out. Or this day I'm going to stop for a moment, look them in the eyes and say, I'll pray for you. Whatever it is, some way this week. And maybe you'll find 10 ways, and maybe you'll find 100 ways. Because when we have that intention, there's so many ways we can be of benefit without it even being hard on us whatsoever. It's just like flipping a switch that says, I know my interconnectedness. I know that this is me. This homeless person on the street is me. There's a part of me that's suffering right there. So how do I want to be to me in that situation? How do I want to be to God in that situation? So that's the invitation this week. Find at least one way that you can serve someone else this week. And so the invitation overall is to recognize that as humans, our destinies are intertwined. Find ways to teach others what you have done, to show others to have the freedom you have, and to create the environment where everyone can thrive. We can do it. Thank you. Let's turn within for prayer. And so in this moment, again, we just acknowledge one life. There's only one life. There's only one power, one presence, one infinite mind. We're all thinking from that one mind. We're all living that one life as unique expressions of it. And so we come into that full awareness this morning of our divinity, of our oneness, not only with God and God, as divinity, but with all others. I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. What I do to the least of these, I do to me. And so this day I know, right here and right now, that each of us, our eyes are fully open to all the ways that we are infinitely connected to each other. And we move from that awareness to create this world that works for everyone. Simply by making the choices moment by moment by moment to treat each one as the divine expression of God that they are. And to lift them up and to do what we can. No more than what we can, just what we can. And I know that great good is coming forth from this practice, from this truth, from this expanded awareness of my connectedness, my interdependence, my oneness with everyone and everything that is. I know that also in this moment we come into that clear awareness that all is good, that all is divine, and all is absolutely perfect right now, and right now. I am just so grateful for my awareness, so grateful for this truth, so grateful for the ways that each of us are embodying this truth, expressing this truth, creating that world that works for everyone. Knowing that this is so, I release this word, I let it be, I know it is done, and all is well. And we ground it together with the words, and so it is. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for all who participated in the service. Thank you for showing up today and viewing or being a part of our service. We're so glad you were here. We look forward to seeing you at the annual meeting on Zoom, and also we look forward to you seeing you next week. We'll bring you more great stuff, so keep joining us. Let's stay together in spiritual community as this all unfolds. Peace and blessings.